Okay, do you see the Word file that I just opened?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're just going to look through a few suttas on the perception of anatta, the perception of non-self. Okay, so here, this is like one of the classic sources for the perception of non-self. This is found in the Girimananda Sutta, which occurs in the Anguttara Nikaya Book of Tens. Okay, so the Buddha is speaking about a monk who's gone to the forest and so on. And then the essential point is that one contemplates by way of, in this case, it's by way of the 6 internal and external sense bases. So the eye and its object, visible forms, the ear and its object, sounds, the nose and odors, the tongue and taste, the body and tactile objects, and the mind and mental phenomena, objects are non-self. So in this way, one dwells contemplating non-self in the 6 internal and external sense bases. So that is called the perception of non-self. But there are many other suttas that occur in the Samyutta Nikaya, particularly in chapter 22, which expound the teaching or the practice of non-self by way of the 5 aggregates. So here we have bodily form, feeling, perception, the volitional activities, and consciousness are non-self. And so we'll be doing it today. We'll be doing it in both ways. First, we'll do a period with the 12 sense bases. Then we'll do a walking meditation in which we're applying non-self. We're developing the perception of non-self in regard to the act of walking. Then we'll do another short session of sitting meditation in which we focus on the perception of non-self in regard to the 5 aggregates. Okay, so what is what is actually meant by the teaching of non-self? And I'm not going to go into a long explanation of it, but just to get the core, to sort of compress it into a nutshell. It's the teaching that denies within us, or that there is any kind of stable, lasting, substantial basis for personal identity, a lasting, stable, substantial basis, unified basis for the notion of I, what I am, what I truly am. And so the idea of I or self, according to the Buddha's teaching, arises because of our fundamental ignorance, avijja, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, lack of insight. And so the process of experience is real, relatively speaking, it's real. There are really processes or acts of consciousness, which will be accompanied by feeling, perception, volitions. But those acts of consciousness are always changing, arising, and passing away with incredible speed, so that we're not able to see the constant change or flux of experience, and we're not able to see the composite nature of experience, but instead this flux of experience gets sort of clouded over with the mist of ignorance, and then we grasp upon this flux of experience as being the lasting I or self, or something that is happening to an I or a self. So we always have the sense that within us, behind our changing experience, there is a kind of witness which witnesses our changing experiences, or an actor, an agent which performs our actions. But for the Buddha, from the Buddhist perspective, experience is this ever-changing process involving transient feelings, perceptions, acts of volition, and the awareness of all this, which is consciousness. And so that is the process of experience. And yet this notion of I and self sort of gets stamped and superimposed on our experience to such an extent that we take it for granted. And the way to dispel the notion of I and self is through deep penetrating insight into the composite and transient nature of experience. And so the actual realization or penetration of non-self generally takes place in very deep levels of insight knowledge. So we're going to be engaging in a kind of reflective contemplation of non-self, which is a way to sort of prepare, let's say, open the gates to the direct realization of non-self. Okay, in the suttas, we find a kind of standard arguments set forth as a way of establishing the truth of non-self. And so here the Buddha will begin with questioning the monks. He says, what do you think is bodily form, permanent or impermanent? So they say it's impermanent. Is what is impermanent dukkha or sukha, bound up, unsatisfactory, or a source of true happiness? So it's unsatisfactory. It's not necessarily suffering in a literal sense, but what is impermanent is inadequate, deficient, flawed, defective. Okay, so is what is impermanent, defective, and subject to change fit to be regarded as mine, what I am, or myself? Then the answer is no. And then the same reasoning is applied to the other aggregates: feeling, perception, volitional activities, and consciousness. They all turn out to be impermanent, defective, or unsatisfactory, and subject to change. And so they can't legitimately be regarded as mine, what I truly am, or myself. And so then the Buddha sort of wraps it up and says, any kind of bodily form, feeling, perception, volitional activities, consciousness, whether past, future, or present, and so on, all bodily form and the other aggregates should be seen correctly with wisdom as this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And then this perception of non-self is said to be sort of the fast track to abandoning the taints of the primordial defilements of sensual lust, craving for existence, and ignorance, or for abandoning the underlying tendencies, the tendencies towards attachment to pleasant feeling, aversion to disagreeable feeling, and ignorance about all conditioned phenomena. And so the fast track, the direct route, is to see the I as non-self, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind as not mine, not I, not myself. And this teaching of non-self is actually the teaching of emptiness. And so in the Parayana of the Sutta Nipata, there's a little sutta where an inquirer named Mogaraja asked the Buddha, how does one look upon the world so that the king of death does not see one? How does one escape from the bondage of birth, aging, and death? And then the Buddha replies, look upon the world as empty, being always mindful, and having uprooted the view of self, one may thus cross over death. The king of death does not see one who looks upon the world thus. And then this is a more formal exposition of emptiness, or showing the identity of emptiness and non-self. So Ananda comes to the Buddha and says, you are always teaching that the world is empty, the world is empty. How is it that the world is empty? Then the Buddha says, it's because it is empty of self and of what belongs to a self that it is said the world is empty. And what is empty of self and of what belongs to self? In other words, empty of I and mine. The I is empty of self and of what belongs to self. Forms, visible forms are empty of self and of what belongs to self. I consciousness is empty um, of self and of what belongs to self. Eye contact, the feeling that arises with eye contact as condition, and so on. And then this extends to the ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So they're all empty of a self and of anything belonging to a self, any truly existent I, and anything that can be taken as mine. So because it is empty of self and of what belongs to self, it's said the world is empty. Okay, so now we'll go into this reflective contemplation on anatta. And it's a repetitive practice. And so it's through repetition that one builds up a kind of momentum of investigation. So because it's repetitive, there's always the danger that you could just slide into dullness and drowsiness, or just take the repetition for granted. In that case, you lose the benefit of repetition. Okay, so you can take now a fairly comfortable sitting meditation position. And then settle into, well, settle the mind by focusing the attention on the breath. Okay, we are going to practice now the perception of anatta, the perception of non-self, with regard to the 6 internal and external sense bases. First, the eye, the organ of vision, is not self. It is not myself. It is not fit to be taken as mine, as a true I, in the sense of a subjective I, the letter I. It is not myself. It is just the faculty of vision, arisen in dependence on this body, and functioning through various conditions. So the I organ is not mine, not I, not myself. And then you just dwell on that, trying to pull away that identification with the I. The entire domain of visible forms, all colors and shapes, are not mine, not I, not myself, and not objects relating to a self, not the objects of a self. They are just visible forms arisen through conditions. And the consciousness that sees forms through the I is not a self, but just an act or process of consciousness with the function of seeing forms. I consciousness or visual consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself. Then we move to the ear. The ear, the faculty of hearing, is not mine, not a true I, not myself. It is just a sense faculty, a sense organ with the function of responding or picking up sounds. The entire domain of sounds is not mine, not I, not myself, nor anything pointing to a self. They are just sounds arising through conditions. And the act of hearing sounds is not the action of a self, but just the function of ear consciousness, which arises through the ear organ, hearing sounds. The ear consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself, not the property of a self. Okay, the nose is not mine, not I, not myself. It is just a sense faculty with the function of picking up or receiving odors. The domain of odors also is not mine, not I, not myself, nor anything pointing to a self, but just odors, phenomena arisen through condition. And the activity of smelling odors is not the action of a self, but it's just the activity of nose consciousness. An act of consciousness arisen on the basis of the nose faculty with the function of smelling odors. So the nose odors, nose consciousness, not mine, not I, not myself. The tongue is not self. It is not mine, not I, not myself, nor the property, the belonging of a self. It is just a sense faculty with the function of tasting flavors, picking up tastes. Okay, the domain of tastes, of flavors, is not mine, not I, not myself. But just conditioned phenomena arisen through condition. The tongue consciousness is not self, not mine, not I, not myself. It is just a transient act of consciousness with the function of tasting flavors, experiencing tastes. So the tongue, tastes, and tongue consciousness, all of them are not mine, not I, not myself, nor anything belonging to a self. The body is not mine, not I, not myself. It's just the body faculty with the ability to respond to receive touch sensations. the touch sensations, the tactile sensations, textures are not mine, not I, not myself. And nothing pertaining to or pointing to a self. They're just touch sensations. And the body consciousness that experiences tactile touch sensations is not a self, not mine, not I, not myself, but just body consciousness that knows tactile or touch sensations. Okay, then the mind faculty, the faculty of thought, of thinking, is not mine, not I, not myself. It's just the faculty for formulating thoughts, ideas, inner images, all of diverse, purely mental objects. And all those mental objects, thoughts, ideas, images, and so forth, are not mine, not I, not myself, nothing pointing to a self, but just ideas, thoughts, images, feelings, and emotions arisen through conditions. And the mind consciousness, the consciousness that is aware of our thoughts, images, ideas, and so forth. The mind consciousness, too, is not mine, not a true I, not myself, nothing belonging to a self, but just a type of consciousness that can receive internal or purely mental objects. So we go through again quickly this time. The I is not self, nor the property of a self. Visible forms are not the self or the property of a self. I consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself. The ear is not mine, not I, not myself. Sounds are not mine, not I, not myself. Ear consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself. The nose is not mine, not I, not myself. Odors are not mine, not I, not myself. Nose consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself. The tongue is not mine, not I, not myself. Tastes are not mine, not I, not myself. Tongue consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself. The body faculty is not mine, not I, not myself. The sphere of touch sensations is not mine, not I, not myself. Bodily consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself. The mind faculty is not mine, not I, not myself. The mental objects, such as ideas, thoughts, concepts, and so forth, are not mine, not I, not myself. And mind consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself. And so these 6 internal sense bases, their corresponding objects, and the corresponding types of consciousness based on them, all of them are not mine, not I, not myself. Okay, now you just dwell for a couple of minutes in sometimes a kind of sense of emptiness or voidness arises, that almost as though the ground has been pulled away from you. So just rest in that for a couple of minutes. Okay, now we'll be doing a period of walking meditation. And the way we do this, the walking meditation, again, using the perception of non-self, though not so explicitly. And this is what I explained on the last day of the retreat that we had last week. Okay, so you begin at your starting point, the starting point of your walkway. Then you become aware, firstly, of the intention to take a step. And we begin with the right foot. So you become aware that there is the intention has arisen to take the right step. Okay, then you take mindfully, you take the right step. And then when you complete the right step, then you pause for a moment. And then you become aware next of the intention to take the left step. And then you take the left step. Then you pause for a moment. And in that pause, you become aware of the intention to take the right step. You take the right step always mindfully. Then when it's completed, the intention to take the left step. And in this way, you walk from the starting point to the end point of the walkway. Then you pause for a moment, or actually before you pause, you become aware of the intention to stop walking. Then you stop walking. Then you become aware of the intention to turn around. And then you become aware of the intention for each step in turning around. Usually for me, it takes about 3 steps, sometimes 4 steps to turn around. For each one, you become aware of intention to turn, act of turning, intention, act, intention, act. Then you become aware, you form the intention to stand still. Then you're aware of standing still. Then intention, right step. You take the right step, intention, left step. You take the left step, and so on. Yeah, so what's going on here is that the intention is a factor in the aggregate of volitional activities. And of course, the body is the aggregate of rupa, material form. And you're knowing that you're walking. So this, you could say, is the aggregate of maybe perception and consciousness combined. So we're looking at the act of walking by way of the aggregates. Okay, so let us start. We'll do this about 20 minutes, and then I'll sound the gong to bring us back to our sitting position. Okay, so everybody should have moved back to their seat. Okay, so far we've done now the perception of anatta, of non-self, using the 6 sense bases and their objects and the corresponding types of consciousness as the template. And now we'll do the same contemplation, but now using the 5 aggregates as the material for perceiving non-self. And I won't go into a detailed explanation of the 5 aggregates, but just a rather quick, hasty overview. So we have the aggregate of material form, which we could say is the physical body. The aggregate of feeling, which is it's not emotion as such, but feeling is the way, the tone of experience as being pleasant, painful, or neutral. And it can occur through all of the 6 avenues of sense perception, through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind, the mind organ. The feeling of being pleasant, painful, or neutral. Perception is that mental function which focuses on, which determines the characteristics of the objects. So we have perceptions of forms, sounds, odors, tastes, touch sensations, and mental objects. Then the aggregate of volitional activities, so all of the acts of intention, purpose, aim, motivation. So what we were doing just now with the walking meditation, we were watching the intention. That is a factor in the aggregate of volitional activities. So we could see that the volition is the condition, or the intention is a condition for the movement of the body. And then consciousness is the basic awareness which arises through any of the 6 sense faculties, illuminating the objects in that particular domain of experience. So we have eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and then the purely mental consciousness, which illuminates the domain of internal objects, ideas, perceptions, and so on. Okay, so we could take our sitting position. Yeah, I'll leave a few minutes for questions after we run through this exercise. So take your sitting position. Do a couple of minutes of mindful breathing. Okay, now we'll be developing the perception of anatta, non-self, on the basis of the 5 aggregates. So we start with the aggregate of material form, physical form, in other words, the physical body. So this physical body, the aggregate of form, is not self. It is not mine, not I, not myself. And then you could develop some lines of reflection to sort of verify or validate the idea of non-self. This body originally comes into being through the union of sperm and egg, sperm from the father, egg from the mother. It inherits a genetic code or sets of genes going back through countless generations. And those genes largely govern the development and characteristics of the body. And then day by day, the body is sustained by the food that it takes in from the outside, which transforms external nutrients into the substance of the body, by water by the air that we breathe. So this body has no independent existence, no autonomy, but it is a conditioned phenomena, arisen through conditioning factors, sustained by conditioning factors. So this body is not myself, not mine, not I, not myself. A feeling, the aggregate of feeling, is a mental factor that experiences or that gives a tone to an experience, the tone of being pleasant, painful, or neutral. So feeling arises through the contact between the mind and its object through the sense faculty. So feeling is dependent on sense faculty, sense object, consciousness, and the contact between them. Feeling arises and perishes moment after moment after moment. So feeling, the totality of feelings, are not mine, not I, not myself. Feeling is just a mental factor, ever changing, with the function of experiencing the object as being pleasant, painful, or neutral. So feeling is not mine, not I, not myself, not something belonging to a truly existent, substantial self. Perception is the mental factor with the function of picking up or distinguishing the features, the characteristics of the object. Feeling arises in relation to visible forms, to sounds, to odors, to tastes, to tactile or touch sensations, and to purely mental objects. Perceptions arise and vanish from moment to moment. And so perceptions are not mine, not I, not myself. Perceptions occur, but they don't point to a self as the subject of perceptions, as the one who perceives. So perception is non-self. The aggregate of sankharas, volitional activities, includes all things like intentions, purposes, aims, motivations, some bad like greed, hatred, conceit, jealousy, ignorance, others good like impulses of generosity, kindness, understanding, humility. But all those volitional activities arise in relation to an object, and then they vanish. And so all volitional activities are not mine, not truly I, not myself, not the activities of a self, just acts of volition, intentions, motives that arise and then vanish. And so all volitional activities are not mine, not I, or the actions of an I, not myself. And then we come to the fifth aggregate. This is the aggregate of consciousness. You could call this the way I understand consciousness as the light of awareness that arises through any of the six sense faculties. So we have I consciousness, is consciousness arisen through the I faculty, illuminating the domain of forms, visible forms. And so ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness arisen through the body faculty, illuminating the domain of tactile sensations, touch sensations. And then mind consciousness arisen through the mind faculty, illuminating the domain of ideas, images, thoughts, inner perceptions, and so on. And so then we contemplate that consciousness is not mine, not I, not myself, just an ever-changing process of mental acts illuminating their respective or their corresponding objects. So consciousness is not myself, not the activity of a self, but just the light of awareness arising through a sense faculty, illuminating the domain of objects. And so after we go through each of the 5 aggregates individually, then we bring them all together and we contemplate these 5 aggregates together are not mine, not I, not myself, nor are they the belongings or possessions of a self, but just through their combined functioning, they give rise to the delusion, the distorted idea of I, mine, and myself. Yeah, this you could, when you have time, you could develop this perception on your own in further detail. But now we just come back to a few mindful breaths, in and out, in and out. And then emerge slowly and mindfully. Okay, we can have a few minutes to take some questions. So I see that there's a question already in the chat box, maybe 2. Okay, so this question is from Madeline. Can you please say something about objects of mind consciousness, such as artistic creations like music and poetry, being non-self? Yeah, so we could say that all sort of the creations, artistic creations, even 500-page novel, even though it's coming from one's, or a symphony, a complete symphony, or all entire museum of paintings, all my paintings, so to speak. Conventional sense, we could say, I am the author of the novel, or I am the writer of the poetry, or the artist who paints the pictures. So in that sense, conventionally, we could say the novel is mine, the poetry is mine, the paintings are mine, the musical, the symphony is mine. But that's just a sort of conventional way of speaking. But when you look in terms of taking we call this the phenomenological point of view or the analytical point of view, you could say the act of creation, let's say writing a poem, there'll be ideas maybe appearing to mind consciousness, and then there'll be volitional activities, the volition of writing the poem. And then when I look at the poem, perceiving it, and then if I'm satisfied with it, there might be a feeling of pleasure. If I'm dissatisfied, feeling of pain. And then if I want to make revisions, that will be volitional activities motivating volition, volitional activities motivating the acts of revising the poem. Yeah, how a poem originates, why some people have that ability, others don't. Probably we would say that this is a product of maybe even over several lifetimes of trying to create poetry, sort of how this artistic talent develops, probably through trial and error over several lifetimes until one becomes an accomplished poet, accomplished composer. Like, I don't imagine somebody like Mozart just started learning music in his life in 18th century Austria, but probably my supposition is that he was a heavenly musician in one of the, maybe a chief musician in one of the heavenly worlds who then came back into the human world, maybe through a vow to bring beauty into the human world. I don't know, that's about the best that I could do with that question. Okay, let's see if there's another written question. Is there an, oh, this is Alia, it should be Alaya. Yeah, this was the Alaya consciousness was, it's a philosophical tenet in the Yogacara school, one of the schools of Mahayana Buddhism, that arose, the idea arose out of an attempt to how do you explain memory and maybe habitual formations, habitual tendencies. So the early Buddhism and even Madhyamaka school of Mahayana Buddhism just posits 6 types of consciousness and just says that when conditions are ripe, memory will appear. And they don't give, even the Theravada school doesn't give a theoretical explanation for habitual dispositions. And so the Yogacara school posits another type of consciousness called the alaya consciousness, the storehouse consciousness, which functions to store up or preserve the impressions of past experiences and habitual tendencies. And that forms the basis for memory and character dispositions. It's a big topic. It requires somebody who specializes in that area. It's not my specialty. Okay, we'll look at the hands. Okay, first is Emily.
Thank you, Bhante. I just want to confirm that the mind consciousness of the 5 aggregates is different from the life transcending mind consciousness that carries from life to life, right? Because like when one passes away, nothing left, the 5 aggregates are not left, but there are only left a few threads of mind consciousness that might carry from life to life.
Yeah, it is a kind of mind consciousness that carries from life to life, but that mind consciousness is something that's occurring as a process rather than as a substantial entity like a self or a soul. So it's arising and passing away from moment to moment. And then in the transitional phase, also the mind consciousness arises and passes away from moment to moment. And then the mind consciousness is what then becomes the relinking consciousness. That is, it's the consciousness that links the old life with the new life.
But is that mind consciousness the one we talked about and we're contemplating here? It's different, right?
Yeah, well, what I was speaking about is the mind consciousness in our throughout the course of our life, rather than the mind. It's the same same class of consciousness as a consciousness that's not dependent on the 5 physical organs. But the ordinary mind consciousness in the course of life would be an active consciousness that's being aware of some kind of mental object, whereas the mind consciousness that forms the thread from one life to the next is you could say it's a subtler dimension of the mind consciousness.
I see. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a big topic and I really can't go into details now.
Yeah, I also have a very quick practical question. Like when I was sick and I'm not feeling very comfortable and then doing the non-self meditation,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to focus because I would have the constant feeling that, oh, my head is painful. Like I have this headache. My arm is not comfortable. So the concept of I and mind constantly rising, it's very difficult to go back to the non-self contemplation. I wondered, like, besides just keep on practicing, is there any better way to overcome this?
Yeah, I think that's where I think you just have to get sort of more habituated to sitting for sustained periods of time and not paying attention to the pains that might arise. Just keep on trying to direct the mind towards the theme of reflection.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you could
Patty.
even readjust the posture when doing this meditation. You don't have to maintain a single posture for a long time.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, we'll take one more question, then I'll have to go for the meal. So this will be Rina Panigrahi.
Yeah, so let's say I'm at work and I'm working on a project.
Yeah.
So I guess the project is a mental object or maybe combination of mental objects and physical objects. But there you are required to own the project or own the responsibility and expand and accumulate more.
Yeah.
You know, so how do you practically, like, are you supposed to not feel that you own that mental object or physical object? Or are you?
I say when engaged in a project, don't settle back and try to do the analysis in terms of the aggregates or in terms of non-self. When engaged with the project, just try to do your best with the project. But reflectively, say if you reach, this is where the idea of non-self comes in useful. If the project is very successful, sort of the natural tendency is to become proud and maybe a bit arrogant. It's my project. I succeeded. I'm wonderful and magnificent. Then you do a sort of just a very simple reflective. This project is not mine, not I, not myself, just a project that resulted from the working together of these 5 aggregates. And
But
then
even to execute the project, don't you need to own it or feel that you own it or are fully responsible it?
well, you have a sense of responsibility for doing your best, but that's a different thing from giving rise to this, call this egotistical sense of self. You try your best because that is your responsibility. Okay, and then if the project is not successful, if it's a failure, and other people like the colleagues reject it or the boss rejects it, then you tend to feel, I'm a failure. You become disappointed, miserable. But you could bring in the reflection on non-self. I tried my best, but the project didn't succeed. But it's not mine, not I, not myself. So I'm not going to get miserable over it. But still, to fulfill your responsibility, you make the determination, next time I will try better.
And should you go for like promotions and those kind of things? Like
Of
we
course,
always
I
want
think
to get.
within the work environment, you have to do your best, even try to get promotions, but not to build up the ego, but as a mark of satisfaction. Okay, well, I'm going to have to end the session because even though there's no self here, but other people are waiting for this combination of 5 aggregates to go to the dining hall. And those 5 aggregates will be waiting and not taking their meal until this set of 5 aggregates comes, because I'm the elder. Okay, so we'll just do a quick sharing of the merits. I'll just do it in the shortest way. Dukkha patacani dukkha, bhaya patacani bhaya, soka patacani soka, antu sabbepi panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. And then we go sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
and then do
Thank you,
3
Patty.
vows to
Sadhu,
the Buddha.
sadhu.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay.
Thank you,
One,
Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Bante. Sadhu, sadhu,
Great.
sadhu.
Sadhu,
Thank
sadhu.
you.
Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you,
Okay.
Bante.
Thank you,
Oh, yeah.
Bante.
I should say, wait, next week we'll have one more, even though it's April 1st, we'll have one more session on perceptions. This will be on the bright side. This will be the perception of peace, the perception of dispassion. It's the one remaining perception that we have. Then April 8th, then we will start the Anguttara Nikaya class again. And now, since everything is opening up, we're going to do it in a hybrid way. Those people who come online will join online. Those who want to come in person will come in person. Probably we'll have it in the Kuan Yin Hall. I have to figure out the logistics of how to do it. But anyway, next week we'll still be doing entirely online, the last of the practice of perceptions.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Have a good luck.
Okay.
Bante, thank
Okay,
you.
so we'll have to end now.